welcome to another episode of Toastmasters TV, filmed on location at the Wellesley Public Media Studio. We tried to book the Fox studio, but it was already being used for another Donald Trump, Megyn Kelly special. My name is Paul Hart, and I'll be your MC tonight. I've been a Toastmaster for 5 years, and I am currently the club president of the Sun Life Toastmasters Club that meets here in Wellesley every Thursday at noon. Tonight, we have members of the Sun Life Club, as well as clubs from the surrounding towns here with us, and we will be showing you some of the parts of our typical meeting, including a couple prepared speeches and a few rounds of what we call table topics, which is simply impromptu speaking. Toastmasters is an international organization with clubs all over the world. It is a great environment to work on public speaking in all types of speeches. It offers the opportunity to become a better speaker and a better leader. And it takes only the desire to step outside one's comfort zone and the time to practice. After all, practice makes perfect. Now, stepping outside your comfort zone can be scary, and it is for everyone when they first start. But we make our meetings fun with things like table topics. We're going to have some fun tonight, and I think you're going to hear from some interesting people and maybe have a few laughs. Without any further ado, let me introduce the first speaker. Dana Baida was born in Israel and soon after learned to say her name in Hebrew as a first language. Later, she added English, French, Spanish to what was already a confused set of communication skills. Dana has spent about 20 years traveling around the world. During that time, she has heard her name mispronounced in more creative ways than she could have thought of herself. Tonight, she will attempt to finally clarify that point. Please welcome Dana Baida, Coffee Names.
Have you ever stood in line in a coffee shop, just waiting to grab a quick cup of coffee and get out? But the person in front of you in line was taking ages to spell their name out to the cashier? Or have you ever stood at the other end of the counter, but nearly missed your cup of coffee because you couldn't recognize your own name being called? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and dear viewers, I am the person in front of you in line. I am the one who would miss her cup of coffee because she couldn't recognize her own name being called. In fact, many people have asked me, how do you pronounce your name? And I really appreciate that question, because it means that you took a moment to think about it and didn't just assume. My name is Dana, pronounced Da-na to rhyme with banana. But I can't always take the time to explain. Sometimes I too just want to grab a quick cup of coffee. So at Starbucks, I am known as Tracy. It is not a nickname. Tracy is my coffee name, a name that is quick and easy to spell and pronounce. I used to think that I was the only one who uses coffee names until I stumbled upon an article on NPR that pointed to a blog post on the Village Voice. Shefali Kulkarni, the writer of the blog, had a similar issue to the one I do. People found her unfamiliar name difficult to handle. Suddenly, I wasn't alone. With the help of Shefali, I learned that this is a lot more common than I thought. I shared her blog post on Facebook and learned that everyone around me had coffee names. I already knew that my husband, Elad, uses the name Kyle. But now I learned that Michal is sometimes Michelle, and Shreya gives the name Sheila. My friend Grant, who lives in Barcelona, loved the Spanish mispronunciation of his name to Gran and went with Mr. Big. It worked great until that one time when the B was misheard as a P. He's now looking for a new coffee name. A coffee name is more than a solution to a pronunciation problem. It's an opportunity. You can be whoever you want, just for the short time it takes to order a cup of coffee. Imagine going into a Starbucks and becoming a spy. You can be Bond, James Bond. Order your Frappuccino shaken, not stirred. All by answering the question, "What is your name?" asked by someone who really doesn't want to get to know you. Shefali Kulkarni tells the story of someone who has been going into the same store every day, giving a different name. Imagine the possibilities. Being someone different every day. It could make life so interesting, as long as you remember which alias you use when it's time to pick up your cup of coffee. Oh, that cup of coffee that will yank you back to reality. Real life, real work, real names. But reality is not necessarily a bad thing. Some people choose to use their real name no matter what. I got a message from Zahava, who told me that she likes using her real name because it's unique, and people are more likely to remember it and therefore remember her. A name says so much about a person, who we are and where we come from. Some people carry a name of their parents or grandparents, and by doing so, they keep the legacy of their family alive. Others have names full of meaning, and they can tell a real interesting story about it. And if pronunciation is important, we can choose a rhyme to make it more memorable. But even if we don't, there is no shame in asking, "How do you pronounce your name?" You may get an interesting answer. And you may want to think about your own coffee name. Next time you stand in line for coffee, take the time to think about the name you're going to give the person on the other side of the counter. And if you hear the call, "Tracy, your coffee is ready," turn around and look for me. I may be right behind you. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thanks, Donna. A wonderfully creative speech, and it gets better every time we hear it. Next, we will have a few rounds of table topics. We have a topics master, Kristen Culliver, and she is going to ask questions of our audience members, and they will respond on the spot and try to keep their responses to 1 to 2 minutes. I often think of this kind of speaking as the interpersonal communication that we do every day with random people that we meet. And it definitely adds a fun flavor to our meetings. Let me now introduce our topics master, Kristen.
Thanks, Paul. This is probably my favorite part of our meetings. And you can imagine I thrive on the table topics myself, so I was delighted and honored to be asked to host. And believe me, I had a lot of fun looking up some great questions to ask all of you. So we're going to have a good time. I'm going to start with the question, and then I will call up someone so they have a moment or two to gather their thoughts before they speak. If you could stop time for 1 hour, what would you do with it? Michelle, would you like to share with us?
That's a fun question. If I could stop time for a moment and share something with you. I think there's a lot of moments we go through our life that we could just, if we could just stop and tell ourselves it's going to be okay, or stop and ask a parent, why are you like this? It would make a lot of difference in our life. But I don't talk about my mom a lot because I think she's just had an overwhelming presence in my life that I can't funnel a thought and communicate about her. But I think if I had a moment in time, I'd want to go back to maybe when my mom was in her 20s or early 30s, around the same time I am right now, and ask her, what was she thinking? And why am I asking what is she thinking? She has brought up 4 kids with such strict values and morals and outlooks on life, to have high expectations of people as well as yourself. And I just would like to ask her what motivated her to be like that and raise her kids and her family like that. Why am I so high-strung and I expect that from others and myself, and I have such an interesting outlook on life, and I think that's a lot because of her. And I struggle with that because I think, Michelle, just loosen up, just be okay. It's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay. But I think, even though I struggle with that, I have a lot of qualities that I got from her and I admire in her. And my mom and dad are both such loyal, hardworking people, and I don't think I'd be who I am today without them. Ms. Tabletop.
Thank you, Michelle, for that insight. Some people believe in reincarnation. If you could come back as any animal in your next life, what would you be and why? Anna?
Coming back to life as an animal would be a spectacularly strange experience. The first animal that came to mind for me was a gazelle. Perhaps it's because of my height. Who knows? Gazelles for me resemble a strong, confident creature, ones that you can't chase, you can't find, you can't bring them back to reality. Perhaps if I were reincarnated into an animal and became a gazelle, I could travel the world, travel the land that I lived on, and would be able to find myself in those lands, in those areas of the world where that confidence, that strength would give me the opportunity to embrace my height and my love of life and nature. So a gazelle, maybe it's my spirit animal, maybe it's a way that I could embrace my confidence in myself and my strength and height in a new life if I become reincarnated. So who knows? Perhaps I will.
I thought you were going to say giraffe. But okay, I like gazelle. That works. All righty. This one could be interesting. What's the strangest food you've ever eaten? Adrian, would you like to come up and share with us?
What's the strangest food I've ever eaten? I've eaten so many strange foods. From giraffe meat to insects to crocodile meat. But the insects were the strangest of them all. And the reason is this place that we went to served them either alive, so you had to fight and keep catching them before you eat them, while others had them medium rare, and others had them well done. And I guess it would taste somewhere between chicken and fish. And I remember one of the friends that we tasted this strange insect would look at the eyes and apologize to the insect. And so the strangest food that I have eaten, I would say, is an insect because of the form and the different ways that it was served to us, either alive or medium or well done.
I hope we haven't lost our audience with that one. One of my favorite things to have at the end of a meal, though, is a fortune cookie. So I would like for you to interpret the fortune cookie for us. The phrase is, all things are difficult before they are easy. Subhadra, would you like to come up and tell us?
How many of you have faced this dilemma where you started out with something that was really, really hard or scary, and then you overcome that in course of time? Let's start with Toastmasters. Isn't that the best example we can think of, we can all relate to today? Most of us started a Toastmasters journey because we had a challenge or we were scared of public speaking, or for that matter, in my case, just coming in front of the audience. Be it because I was singing, be it because I was speaking, it didn't matter. As soon as those lights were on stage and I was looking at the audience, I pretty much went blind. I couldn't see anything, and that made it even more scary. But that said, the moment when you jump into that arena and overcome and face your fears, that's the best part, because the very first step you take towards that fear, you understand that fear, you embrace that fear, that's when you realize it's really not that scary. What's the worst that can happen? And when you look back in time and you see that you faced that fear fearlessly, or maybe not so much, but you feel less fearful now, I think that's one of the most rewarding moments in time. So I invite you all to embrace and make resolution to embrace one thing that you're scared of. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that was a treat right in itself. Okay, here's what I just was curious about. Have you ever met a celebrity? And if so, who? And just in case you haven't, who would you like to meet? Let's see, who can I pick? Ian? Back row.
I may have crossed paths with one or two more famous people throughout my life, but I was once sitting on the couch and I was a little sleepy. I was half asleep, but the TV was still on, and I looked and I saw a friend of mine on the TV. He was in Afghanistan, and The Daily Show was doing a special there. So I'm listening to The Daily Show. I'm watching them talk, and they're walking into a barracks. And I see my buddy over there mopping the floor, and he's mopping the floor in his, just his regular army shirt, his army pants, and I screamed. I jumped out of the sofa and looked and said, "That's my friend." So I think that the celebrities that you most want to meet are the people that you know. When you cross that boundary from this nameless, random person who you imagine is powerful and grand and amazing, and that becomes a real person, because all of us, the celebrities or the less celebrities, are all actual people. We've all gotten to where we are by going through those fears and challenges and pushing through it and doing those hard things that then become easier and easier. And those are the people that we emulate. So I encourage you all to make moves to become your own celebrity. Thank you.
So you can just say, I met a celebrity right now. Awesome. All right, here's an easy one. What is your favorite place to take a vacation? Aline?
You picked the right question for me because I love to travel. I have gone so many places. I've lived in a couple of different countries. I just can't pick. I've gone to so many interesting places. I think one that was very interesting, and some of you at Toastmasters have already heard this story. I went to Panama, and we took a trip on a dugout canoe with a guy in a loincloth. And we went upriver for about an hour and a half to a village. It was called Embera Puru, where the people there spoke Spanish, but they also spoke their own language. They spoke Embera. It was very interesting because they didn't wear clothes like we do. The women wore skirts only, and the men wore loincloths, and the children as well. They greeted us when we got to the village, playing instruments made from reeds that they got from the river, and they used a tortoise shell as a drum, and they played, they took I think it was a bamboo thing with strings on it, and they played like a violin, and they greeted us, and then we had lunch with them. They gave us fried chicken, but they don't have eating utensils, so they wrapped everything up in a palm leaf. And then to clean our hands from the grease, we dipped our hands in water that had basil in it. And then the witch doctor took us for a tour through the jungle, and we learned about birth control, painkillers, all kinds of interesting things. So in terms of traveling, I would say any place is an adventure, and I encourage you to try to go someplace different, a little bit out of your comfort zone, and you'll find amazing things.
All right, this is one I enjoyed answering over a year ago. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give your 10-year-old self? Rob?
Thank you. If I could go back in time, the advice I would give my 10-year-old self would be don't give up on the Red Sox. But to be honest, maybe that wouldn't be my advice because now that the Red Sox win every 3 or 4 years, I kind of look back to the days where the Red Sox were terrible. I remember that ball rolling through Bill Buckner's legs, being very disappointed that they did not win the World Series against the Mets. I remember in 2003 when they gave up that home run in extra innings to the Yankees to lose the ALCS. Now, they won in 2004, they won in 2007, they won in 2013, and I think our expectations are just too high. And it's not fun anymore to watch them win all this time. I hate to admit that, but it's true. So maybe the advice that I would give my 10-year-old self is to embrace the fact that it's fun to be an underdog. It's fun to not win all the time. Sometimes it's good to lose. It builds character. And it helps you realize how sweet the taste of victory actually is when it comes. Thank you.
I'm short, so I'm going to move this. All right, I got a good one here. What do you know? This could be a skill, a topic, well enough to teach others. I hope I say this right. Mamak, please come on up.
A skill or topic that I know really well is failing. I have tried so many things in my life. with the starry-eyed of like, yes, I'm going to do this, and not think too far in advance of what the outcome will be. But because of that, I have tried skiing, I have tried ice skating, I have tried different careers, I have tried many different parenting methods. And with each one, I learned something new about myself. And if I would have stopped and thought through so many of the decisions that I have made in my life, I probably wouldn't have been as adventurous. And I probably would have just become paralyzed in not learning more about myself. So what I can say is, if there's something that is in front of you and your heart says, just do it, you don't have to know all the steps. You don't have to know if you're going to fail, if you're going to succeed, what it's going to look like. If you just listen to this and you put one step forward, or sometimes even jump, there's always usually a parachute there. And there's always something that you're going to learn from that. Thank you.
I'm sensing a theme, and I don't think it was ever intended. Something about overcoming fears and trying new things and just taking life by the horns. I like it. Awesome. Okay, I got a good one. What life lesson did you have to learn the hard way? Donna?
What life lesson did I have to learn the hard way? I think I learned to take courage and jump forward and do things the hard way. For many years, I was afraid, I lacked confidence, and I didn't dare to do things that may have been successful or may have not. I felt safe in an environment where I had a job, a well-paying one, that kept me with time and ability to do a lot of things that I loved, except for the job. It took a lot of frustration and a lot of courage to say enough. After 20 years, I quit that job and went on an exploration. It's been almost a year now, and I think that finally I have the courage to say that I am happy to try new things, even if there's no parachute at the end. Madam Top Masters.
All right. Again, see, love this theme going. What are you most grateful for? Subhadra?
I think someone heard me up there. When she asked that question, I was like, I'm not going to be called upon now, and I have been. So the most grateful thing that I have been in my life is my mother. She's been the biggest blessing. She's not with me now. I lost her 2 years ago, and our entire family has been missing her, and the vacuum that she's created can never be replaced. But looking back, I realized like what a amazing woman she is. We are expecting in September, and we found out we're having a daughter. So to me, it seems like my mom is coming back. My mom's name was Sabita, which means sun. And speaking of names, we had to find a name which was not too hard to spell, and so that there were no coffee names. But I wanted it to rhyme somehow with my mom's, and so we found a name. The name was Sonita, which apparently is Arabic, Indian, and a couple of other languages too. And it meant young sun. What a coincidence, isn't it? So my biggest blessing again is my mom, and that's what I'm most grateful about. And I'm equally grateful that God is sending her back in form of my daughter. Thank you.
Congratulations. It's always a blessing. I don't know. I think that's happy news no matter what. And let's see, what do I have here? Oh, I've got a fun one. What song would be your anthem or entrance music, and why? Ian?
This is not an easy question for me to answer right off the bat. I'm beginning to wish that I could remember more song names. The first one that came to mind was Party Anthem. That sounds a little fun and may exaggerate elements of my life. But the fact is, if I look back at my life as a youngster, a young adult, a growing adult, or a youngster pretending to be an adult, there are so many transitions and changes that happen throughout my life. I have a CD book, and I flip through it, and most of those songs I don't listen to anymore. But I look through it, and I remember all of these moments where, you know, Third Eye Blind was a huge impact on my life in that one moment. There was 2 years of elementary school that I would drive back and forth to school with my friend. My mother, of course, drove. I didn't drive back then. And we would sing Seal in the car every day, singing Seal back and forth, Kiss from a Rose. And so throughout my life, whether it be rock anthems, rap, melodies, electronica, soft songs, these songs resemble a piece of our hearts, what we're feeling at that moment, what we want to feel. Do we want to be amped up and excited and just go and grab life? Do we want to be calm and peaceful? And these various songs that I could name and try and come up with are really just different shades of the various and versatile people that we all are. So I'm not going to choose a song. I'll just remind us all that we have many songs playing in our hearts and in our minds, and to enjoy all of them. Thank you.
I'll be honest, mine's Walking on Sunshine. All right, let's see. What is one thing you have yet to do, but you really want to? Michelle?
One thing that I want to do and haven't done yet is probably be a patient person. Let me explain a little more. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I think something about being the oldest, I think I have that birthright to be a little impatient. At least that's what I try to tell myself every day. But being impatient just influences every aspect of my life, whether it's within my family or my relationship with my newly husband or with my coworkers. And I think I just recognize other people who are so patient. And I just strive to be that way in the way they handle things, handle difficult situations. I work in human resources, and the way that my manager responds to an employee who's dealing with a difficult issue. My sisters are both in the healthcare field. They're both providers. One's a nurse and one works with nuns with dementia, and I just couldn't imagine the patience and the compassion that they have to do what they do. My mom's a teacher working with 6th graders every day. My dad, who dealt with 3 girls plus a wife, and he did get 1 son, so at least that was a kudos to him. But just to be able to handle a situation in a better aspect than I do. But I think it's something that I achieved to do, and I think I can. Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. What lifts your spirits when life gets you down? Anna?
We all have different things, different moments, different pieces of our lives, different people that bring us joy. And not every day is full of sunshine and rainbows. But for me, mostly what brings me back to a state of happiness or calmness or sanity is music. And I don't know what my theme song would be. I was trying to come up with it, but I probably have a whole playlist that I could give you as theme songs. Music for me is what grounds me. It's what centers me. It's what allows me to express myself through a different medium. I don't write any of my own music, but I found that a lot of songs and a lot of albums and a lot of artists are ones that I can relate to, that write and sing about pain or situations that I've gone through myself. And through their words and their rhythms and their melodies, I find that I become more calm, more centered, more grounded, and am able to more easily get through some of the daily struggles or challenges or even more serious moments that life brings us. That's how I come back to a happy, smiling self. And whether music does that for you, or it's people in your life, or other forms of joy, find those ways to bring back happiness to yourself even when clouds are brewing. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you. I'll try that next time. Sorry, I'm short. Okay, I lost my place. Here we go. What is your most beloved childhood memory? Adrian?
My most beloved childhood memory reminds me of a gentleman who kind of mirrors Donald Trump. His name is Idi Amin. Now, Idi Amin had the same style that we see with some of the leaders of the past. Idi Amin was very eccentric. His choice of words would put anyone to laugh. His style of walking and his gestures were very, very interesting at that time of the century. Idi Amin had a way of leading people, no respect of people, which would make me want to advise him to respect and acknowledge different people and different cultures. It would want me to ask him to know that it's good to live in harmony. It's good to appreciate different cultures. And so my childhood memory goes back to Idi Amin because of his style of leadership, the way he would handle his colleagues, his culture, his background, and also the things that motivated him. Very interesting character.
Didn't see that one coming. Okay. All right, I'm going to get a little nerdy here. What book has had the greatest influence on your life? Elaine?
I've had to read a lot of books in my life, a lot of them for school, a lot of them very thick. And I think the one that I always come back to, that I think about, is To Kill a Mockingbird. That really made me think about how people are treated and people's assumptions about how people should be or would be. And I realized that my daughter had to read that book as well, and I wondered what she thought about it. And it's a different time now than when I was growing up. Things are a little more advanced, I would say. And it was interesting because she had some of the same insights that I did. I thought, I can't remember the names of the characters in the book, but I know the man that was accused of murder, I felt like he was innocent and he was framed. And she felt the same way. And it just made me think about how I treat people and how I should treat people. And it made me question how I act. And now when I deal with people, I try to keep that in mind and treat everyone with respect and try to leave any kind of biases out of my assumptions or my decisions. And so To Kill a Mockingbird, I think, is the one that had the most influence on me.
No, I think that was required reading before I got to school. My parents had to read it, but I didn't. And I ended up having to watch the movie version, and I don't know, I always think the book is better. Just personal opinion. All righty. Here's a simple one. What is your favorite time of year? Rob?
I'm going to go with fall being my favorite time of year. A few reasons. One is being in the Northeast. I think it's the most beautiful time of year. Boston, New Hampshire, Maine. It's nice to drive around, look at the leaves changing colors, a lot of pretty scenery. Second is I like how the air is crisp. It's not so cold out that you're freezing like it's in the winters, but there's something about going out and taking a deep breath, and it's a little bit cool, it's crisp, and it just kind of gives me a lot of energy, and you really only get that in the fall. And third, related to my last answer, it is usually the baseball playoff season. It's a time of year where if you're a baseball fan, it's the most exciting part of the season. You're watching who's going to win the World Series, and lots of good times with friends and family rooting on the Red Sox in the postseason. Hopefully they make it again this year. So my answer is fall as my favorite season.
There once was this really funny joke a friend told me. He's from New York City. And he said that, what's the difference between a hot dog that you got at Yankee Stadium and that one you got at Fenway Park? And I went, I don't know. What's the difference? He says, you can't get a Fenway Fank in October. That really annoyed me. But now that we've won a couple of times, I can kind of to him. Now, I just thought I'd be kind of different and ask the same question of 2 or 3 people just to get their insight. You might be curious why someone might join Toastmasters. So I'm going to select a couple of members of our group to tell you why they joined. Let's see here. Can I call you back up, Elaine?
I had thought about joining Toastmasters for over a year. And I have to tell you, I was petrified of speaking in public. Even though I went to Bentley, and to graduate senior year, you had to take a public speaking course. The final exam was to stand on a bench in the middle of the campus while classes were changing and give a speech. I didn't go to class that day. I just couldn't do it. I actually got out of doing that, and I had to do the speech in front of my professor. So I guess that wasn't very good. So then I always thought about that. And I decided one day there was an announcement that said, come to Toastmasters and see what it's all about. And I talked one of my friends into coming with me. And we came to the meeting, and I joined. She said she was going to, but she's like me. She's petrified, so she never came back. But I have to tell you, the first time I spoke, my heart raced. I was so nervous. Even I have a mentor, and I rehearsed my speech with her first. And just doing that with her, I was very, very nervous. But once I got through the first speech, everything got a little bit easier. And I have to say, it's been great. I've met some wonderful people, very interesting speeches that we hear from all kinds of subjects, drinking, lives in another country. Just very interesting. So that's why I joined Toastmasters.
And we're glad to have you. Same question. Let me call on Adrian.
Mine's a little different. When I first came to the US, I could hardly understand anyone. Everyone seemed to speak gibberish, and everyone looked alike. So when doing my master's class and were required to speak, I remember the first class, I stood there and words couldn't come out of my mouth. That was the first time I said a prayer to God, and he didn't answer. I asked him to open the ground so that I could be swallowed, and he didn't answer. But I knew that speaking, whether in front of family, whether you're giving a toast, whether it's a birthday, this is a skill that we all have to develop. And so I pushed myself. You've all heard of facing your fears head on. And so I took a speech 101 class, and I came to also learn about Toastmasters, that they have friendly people who will support you, encourage you. And I remember every time I come, it's still a challenge, but with different people, different nationalities, with a supportive group, it makes Toastmasters the ideal place for anyone out there who would love to learn to speak or to improve your speaking. You will be encouraged, you'll be motivated, and you'll be encouraged again. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask at least one more person's question because it's different coming from everybody. But I want to say one thing. I was told, I don't know the statistics, but apparently the fear of public speaking ranks higher than the fear of death. And I think I've figured out why. Death is inevitable. Giving a speech, not so much. Anna, would you like to come up and tell us why Toastmasters?
Why Toastmasters indeed? 4 years ago, I was really bored with my job, and I had a meeting with my boss, and I just needed something to do outside of my day-to-day that would give me a little bit more enjoyment, engagement, excitement. And my boss mentioned that we had a Toastmasters club at work. I had always wanted to get a little bit better at presenting in front of people. I was really shy as a kid. I've broken a little bit out of that shell. Maybe some in the room would say I've broken a lot out of that shell since I was a kid. And I did. I went over to our other building one day, Thursday afternoon, and I just went to check it out. And 4 years later, I'm still here, still at the same club. I've found that, as you've heard from others, it's a very supportive environment. And personally, I've felt myself grow as a person, as a speaker, and as a leader. Having a group of people that is like-minded, that's there to clap for you, even if you say something wrong, and encourage you to become the best person you can be, is really, really fulfilling. I've made friendships, I've learned a lot about others and myself in the process. And it's been a great journey that is really just getting started. So that's why Toastmasters for me, but as you've heard, it's for everyone very different. So find your reason and find your own Toastmasters journey.
Thanks, Anna. This is where I do the shameless plug. If you're interested in learning more about public speaking and leadership, you should look for your own Toastmasters club. On toastmasters.org, put in your zip code and hit enter, and it'll show you several clubs that you can join and visit. Paul, back to you.
Don't go too far, Miss Topics Master. I'm going to turn the tables on you now. Uh-oh. I have a topics question for you.
All right.
Kristen, it's summertime. Tell us about one tradition that you have for summer, or one thing that you're excited about doing this summer.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. He thinks he scared me. Told you, it's my favorite part. Let me think, summer. Now, first of all, you might go, oh my gosh, she probably hates the beach. You know, it's New England, the water's cold, and you get sunburned, and then there's like lobsters and crabs in the water, and there's jellyfish. And I love the ocean. I'm a Pisces. It's like my natural element. And when I was a little kid, the big deal was getting packed up in the car with my family, as crazy as it might seem, and going out to Nahat Beach for the first day of summer. And it would be early, we'd have breakfast, get in the car, and we'd drive. And there'd only be a few other families there. My parents would put this huge umbrella, this horribly colored green and red and bad blues and yellows. But I'll tell you, when you got lost on the beach, you knew where to find your parents because you could always find that umbrella. They'd set up the blankets, and I'd bring out all my sand pails and shovels. Mind you, I'm like a kid when I'm telling you this story, not an adult. And I would have so much fun making my little sand fort. My brother would have his, and he'd try to throw rocks at mine and knock mine down. And at some point, I got brave enough to go to the water's edge, where the waves are coming in. At first, I'm like, yeah, I know it's the ocean, no big deal. But it's always so cold here in New England. It takes a little while to get warmed up. So you get your feet wet, and you kind of jump back a little when the first wave comes that caught you off guard, you know, the one that's like 5 inches higher than the rest of them. You go a little deeper. Usually when you get around your waist, it's okay. You've kind of figured out that it's not that bad. Somewhere when you get to shoulder height, my mom starts to get nervous. I can see that look. Her radar is on. She's watching. She doesn't want to see my head go under the water because after all, I'm a little kid. You'd never find me. But at that point, I turn around and I start body surfing back to my parents and my sand fort and my snacks and my brother. And I will run back out again, and I do it over and over till it was time to top off on the sunblock, get in the car, and go home. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you for that. Those were some great topics questions, and I loved everyone's responses. As you can see, we have a lot of fun with table topics. Now, let's move on to the next part of our show today. Our second and final speaker tonight is Mamak Cherapu. She was born in Iran and grew up in small towns in Pennsylvania. While attending university in Pittsburgh, one fateful night at a single act of kindness changed Mamak's world. Tonight, she will share how a single act of kindness can bring people of different backgrounds, race, and color together. Please welcome Mamak Cherapu, my bus driver.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and viewers. I was a sophomore in college and enjoying a nice long ride back to the dorms in Pittsburgh. And I was reminiscing about the wonderful evening I just had with the lovely family in their beautiful home and the delicious food. When I looked around and I realized I was the only one left on the bus. Well, I looked out and it was just too dark for me to figure out where am I. So I got up and went to the bus driver and said, "Excuse me, sir, when are we getting into Pittsburgh?" And he looked at me and he said, "Ma'am, this bus doesn't go to Pittsburgh. This is my last stop and I get to go home." At that moment, my head exploded. And all I could think of was, what? I need to get back into Pittsburgh. It is dark out. Where's the phone booth? I don't know how to get back into Pittsburgh. And in that moment, as soon as all these thoughts were racing, another bus flew past us in the other direction. And he looked at me and he said, "Ma'am, that's the bus that's going into Pittsburgh." And I got ready to jump out to go catch that bus, and the door didn't open. I looked at my bus driver, and he looked at me as if to say, "Are you crazy? You think you're going to go and run after a bus in this time of the night?" And in the next instant, he smiled, and he said, "We're going to chase that bus." He turned that bus around as if it was a bicycle, and the chase started. Now, mind you, the bus in front of us has no idea we are pursuing it. And that bus driver also wants his shift to be done very soon. So the bus would get to the bus stop, people would get on, and as soon as we got behind him, it would race off. Okay, no problem, next bus stop. Again, they'd get to the bus stop, people would get on, we'd get right behind him, he'd race off. This happened again and again and again. Finally, he gets stopped at a red light, and we quickly swerve right next to him, and the bus driver opens and closes the door and catches that bus driver's attention, and the bus driver understands and says, "Get over here." And all I could think of is my heart's pounding, and I'm saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, sir." And I hop off one bus, and I hop on the right bus, and I go home safely. For days, I was in amazement how this man, without blinking, in an instant, took me under his wing and made sure I was going to get home. This was a man who was darker than me, had hair much different than me. He was of a different race than me. Not only was I appreciative, but I didn't realize that at that moment, he planted a seed in my heart. And all of a sudden, I found myself being comfortable, smiling at people who were of the same race and background as my bus driver. I talked to them, I laughed, I put my arms around them. I formed really strong friendships with them. This happened when I was little also, when we were the only Middle Eastern family in these small towns where we were surrounded by a sea of people who were much lighter than us, who had yellow hair and orange hair, and were not like us. And it was easy for me to see us as us and them. But their acts of kindness took that away, and it was just us. Always, we are human beings. We see each other's differences. We see our color differences, our race, our backgrounds, our sex. And those differences can become a veil. But with acts of kindness that we show to each other, we take those veils away. And those differences become beauty and is a way for our worlds to expand. My world's absolutely expanded. Rest assured that every time you do an act of kindness, especially to those who are of a different background than you, different color, different race, different sex, you are planting a seed that you have no idea how it's going to bloom. But it is a seed that is bringing us together, and it is a seed that makes us see our differences as beauty and as an expansion of our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamek. Great speech, and we've heard from a lot of great speakers today. It's amazing the wonderful stories we hear, and we hope that you've enjoyed this window into our Toastmasters world. I'd like to conclude our meeting tonight by thanking some people. I'd like to give special thanks to James Joyce and Deb Elbaum for organizing this event, and to the Wellesley Public Media Center for having us here. I'd like to thank everyone who participated and made it a fun night. And I'd also like to thank you watching at home. Please like our video, and please come see a Toastmasters meeting soon. Good night, everyone.